Welcome to the AC 24/7 Top Story Countdown. We'll guide you through the biggest news of the day. Our focus, advocating our rights, advocating health, and advocating Earth. Here's our pick for number 4.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken shuttling around the region on his 4th trip as Israel's war in Gaza escalates tension around the Middle East. Jordan's King Abdullah warning on Sunday of catastrophic consequences of the continuing war in Gaza. From Jordan, Blinken went to Qatar, which has been instrumental in negotiating for the release of hostages held in Gaza. Qatar's Prime Minister saying the recent killing of the senior Hamas official by Israel could impact hostage negotiations.
Of course, having one of the senior leader of Hamas being killed is something that can affect such a complicated process. Yet we are not giving up. We are moving forward.
Well, that killing of a senior Hamas official inside Beirut in Lebanon, just one of the flashpoints escalating tensions since Blinken's last visit. The Americans also killing an Iran-backed militia leader in Iraq after an attack on a US airbase. And the Iranian-backed Houthis continue to interrupt international shipping in the Red Sea. Last month, the US announcing an international effort to deter Houthi attacks. But in this region where I am, very few countries willing to join that coalition to counter those threats. From Qatar, Blinken came here to Abu Dhabi, meeting with the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed. The trip also includes Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel and the West Bank, where officials say there will be tough conversations. But if Blinken's past visits are any indication, and with no sign of an end to Israel's assault on Gaza, his presence may not be enough to calm the region.
TheAdvocateChannel.com looks at the world through the lens of equality and inclusion. Subscribe, like, and share now. AC 24/7's Top Story Countdown continues with our producer's pick for number 3.
It has been a week since the country's most senior defense official has been in the hospital. And for much of that time, very few people, even his boss, the president, were aware. The Pentagon now says that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was rushed to Walter Reed Hospital last Monday on New Year's Day due to severe pain after elective surgery right before Christmas. Today, the Pentagon revealed that even for the initial procedure in December, Austin and his team didn't tell the White House or Austin's deputy. Now, shock and anger from both parties are now spreading across Washington for Austin's failure to reveal for days to people who should have been told that he was still in the hospital.
I do hope that every person in the cabinet recognizes that this was not an appropriate step, not an appropriate way to handle what was his hospitalization.
That is unacceptable, said Roger Wicker, the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. We are learning more every hour about the Defense Department's shocking defiance of the law. Also in the dark were the most senior members of the Biden administration.
I wasn't aware of his medical issue.
Biden says he still has complete confidence in Austin and isn't asking him to resign. But the White House said today that the way Austin notified them needs to be reviewed.
I think there's an expectation that when a cabinet official becomes hospitalized, that will be notified up the chain of command. There is that expectation.
Austin's initial surgery was on December 22nd. He went home the next day. Then he was rushed to the ICU by ambulance on January 1st. His deputy, Kathleen Hicks, was only told the next day that she would have to assume some responsibilities, but not why. It wasn't until Thursday, January 4th, that Hicks, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, and ultimately Biden were told where Austin actually was. The next day, on the 5th, the Pentagon told congressional leaders and put out a public statement. Then finally, on Saturday, 5 days after being admitted, Secretary Austin said in a statement, quote, "I recognize I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better." While Austin was in the hospital, Hicks was on vacation in Puerto Rico, where she periodically assumed Austin's duties. This during a very busy week. The that saw Israel carry out a strike against a Hamas leader in Beirut, the U.S. bomb a militia commander in Baghdad, and U.S. forces continue to actively face attacks by Iranian-backed groups, including the Houthis in Yemen.
That becomes a really tricky situation where you want to be able, as the president, to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's going on? What do we need to do? What's the next course of action? Other options, etc.
People who know Austin say he kept things quiet because of how private he is.
Lloyd Austin is an intensely private person. He doesn't go out in front of the cameras. He doesn't go out of his way to be known or to be seen. He likes to take a lower profile.
Like the Advocate channel on Facebook for the best way to get updates on stories that advocate for equality, justice, our rights, and more. AC 24/7 continues with today's top 2 pick.
There's a lot to do as Congress returns from their holiday recess, and the stakes are high with not 1 but 2 government funding deadlines looming. Now that leadership has reached a deal on the top line numbers, members need to come to an agreement on the spending specifics.
I have excellent news on government funding. Yesterday, I announced with Speaker Johnson that congressional leaders have reached a top-line agreement for government funding for the 2024 fiscal year.
Over the weekend, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Mike Johnson agreed to $1.59 trillion in overall government spending for fiscal year 2024, with $886 billion going to defense spending and $704 billion to non-defense spending.
We've been negotiating in good faith all through the holidays, every day over the holidays, except for Christmas.
Coming to this agreement is an important first step, but experts point out there are still challenges ahead for Johnson, who is still new to this role.
He faces the same challenges that Kevin McCarthy faced and any other Republican speaker was going to face. An incredibly historically small majority where few members are able to jump ship and then be able to pass legislation.
The far-right House Freedom Caucus, a group that played a key role in ousting Johnson's predecessor, Kevin McCarthy, says the top-line deal is a, quote, total failure, and is calling for more dramatic spending cuts. The stakes of the House negotiations are high for individual members, as each one looks to tout legislative wins ahead of the 2024 elections.
Every single seat is up for re-election, and they're always looking through the lens of what is good for me electorally, what is good for our party electorally.
In their negotiations, Johnson and Schumer also agreed to a $69 billion side deal in adjustments that would go to non-defense domestic spending. Now, again, these deadlines are coming quickly. They could face a partial government shutdown on January 19th, and a full government shutdown is looming on February 2nd. Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
Follow the Advocate channel on Twitter and Instagram to stay updated on stories that matter every day. Here's our number 1 story of the day. Take a look.
These terrifying moments on board an Alaska Airlines flight Friday night now causing major safety concerns.
Our focus right now is on this aircraft to determine what happened, how it happened, and to prevent it from happening again.
Investigators say a door plug over an unused emergency exit blew off shortly after the Boeing 737 MAX 9 flight took off from Portland, Oregon. Fortunately, no one was critically hurt, but the incident is raising many questions.
We need to get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible.
In response, Boeing grounding all 737 MAX 9 flights nationwide. That is having a major impact on air travel across the country. As of Monday morning, United and Alaska Airlines canceled more than 360 flights, according to FlightAware. United Airlines saying they're working with passengers to find alternative travel options. It's unknown, though, how long Boeing will ground the flights and how long this will impact travelers.
We are the gold standard for safety in our airspace, but we need to maintain that.
But it's not just this incident causing chaos in the skies. This week brings the threat of severe weather to most of the country. 70 million Americans across the Gulf Coast and Southeast could see heavy rains and damaging winds Monday. Meanwhile, parts of New Mexico, up through the central U.S. to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, could get several inches of snow this week. If you are traveling, experts recommend hopping on waiver offers quickly so you don't get stranded at the airport. Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.